The Philippines weather. You've heard it's hot. You've heard it's close to the equator. Anyway, we're going to get into some details. I'm going to give you an introduction to a couple of sites that are really useful, and you'll be able to use them even for areas other than the Philippines around the world to compare areas and cities. And we're going to talk a little bit about the typhoons, what you call hurricanes back in the USA, for instance, and where they track, where there's less risk of living, and where there's more risk of living, something that you should consider. So let's get into it. First off, here is a chart, a map showing the March 2024 average monthly mean temperatures across the Philippines, and basically it's you can see by the color it's pretty much the same across much of the Philippines, regardless of where you are, north or south, east or west. Where it gets cooler is when you go up in elevation. I'm going to get into the site that does a really good job of graphing the various areas of the Philippines. But first, this is precipitation. There were several different models, and they actually disagreed. I looked at a couple models, and they disagree quite a bit. For instance, this one shows more precipitation down in Mindanao. The other graph I showed from a different organization showed drier conditions in Mindanao in March 20 or February 2024. So really depends upon where you get your information from. After much searching, I came across a very interesting and useful site called weatherspark.com, and you can just get a ton of information here. And I've got, we're going to scroll down here, going to compare the climate weather in Manila, Davao City, which is in Mindanao, Cebu City, Cebu, and Dumaguete, which is very popular. And you can, well, I'll show you as we get down here. Here it shows where they are on the map. Manila, Cebu City, Dumaguete, and Davao. Got your average, high, and low temperatures, and you got each of these is color coded, and here it shows the colors: Manila, Davao green, red for Cebu City, Dumaguete has your months, January through December, and you can see there's not a whole lot of difference. Now, Manila will generally be a little bit higher temperature than Cebu City, Davao City. One of the main reasons for that, most of you can guess, I'm sure, is you have a huge metropolitan area, which is a huge, huge heat dump, basically. I mean, all the buildings and the asphalt and cement, and that just absorbs the heat throughout the day and holds it throughout much of the night. Now, I'm sitting in a condominium 20 floors up in Cebu City. Got my balcony door and my windows open, fan running. I'm comfortable. It is 29 degrees, which, let's see, 29 degrees Celsius is about 84 degrees Fahrenheit. And the problem today is we had rain early this morning, and it's more humid than normal. Usually it's between 50 and 60, but I just checked, I'm more like 65% humidity. That starts to get a little sticky. And sometimes I will close the windows, turn the air on, take some of the humidity out. Anyway, this is throughout the year, so you can see 85 to 90 degrees basically stays within that range. These are your high temps throughout the year, and these are your low temps. Mid 70s to 80 degrees is the coolest generally it gets. And it doesn't change much. If you want cooler temps, you have to go up in elevation. Go up to Baguio, up the summer capital, because it's cooler up there, about a mile high, like Denver, about 5,000 feet, or what, 1,500 meters, something like that, high. And you can cool off. Or Valencia is becoming more popular in the mountains, just outside of Dumaguete, Negros, or other areas. The problem is a lot of the mountain areas are not developed with towns and cities. Valencia is a pretty decent place, but you're going to want your own transportation. Valencia up in the hills above Dumaguete. They don't have taxis there yet, my understanding, and so you're going to want your own transportation and or driver, somebody that you can rely on to pick you up, take you into town if you need to go to Dumaguete or some other place. And a lot more information on this site, and here kind of lays out the highs and lows. Specifically, we go down here, Manila, kind of a heat map. Also, if you want to look at those, Cebu City, Dumaguete, and chance of clear skies. There again, pretty much with the seasons. The percentage of time the sky is clear, mostly clear, or partly cloudy. Less than 60% of the sky is covered by clouds. And daily chance of precipitation. Now we're in when I came in 2015, we were in a drought, and but we still had rain. I think 2-3 times a week instead of 3-4 times a week. And but right now here for the last month or more, it's been we've been in a drought, El Nino weather pattern around much of the world, and we're drier than normal. Haven't had rain very unusual, for about a month. My observation is that 2015 was a drought area. 2019, so 4 years later, here we are in 2024, and another period of drought for a number of months. So if there's a cycle, my observation so far is it's about every 4 years. The sun has a cycle, the earth has cycles. Monthly rainfall, there again, pretty much follow right along. These have it in inches, whereas the Philippines, much of the world goes by millimeters and centimeters, but these are in inches. And this is partly because Manila will be more affected by many of the typhoons that come into the Philippine area of responsibility, much more than the southern islands, Cebu, Davao, and Dumaguete. Hours of daylight, there again, I had a guy comment some years ago, I couldn't take this 12 hours of sunlight, 12 hours of darkness every month, pretty much every month of the year. And it's 12 hours on, 12 hours off, basically, all year long. Chance of muggy conditions. Now, percentage of time that is muggy, oppressive, or miserable, dew point greater than 65 degrees Fahrenheit. We're all a little bit different there. I like it a little warmer than probably most people, and like I said, when the humidity gets above 60% for me, that's starting to get muggy. If there's a breeze, even that doesn't bother me too much. But if you have, the old saying, it's not the heat, it's the humidity. So they have it almost, 96 to 100% those days. I disagree with that. That's not been my experience, but that's what their data shows. Average wind speed, there again, Dumaguete, a little bit higher wind speed. Cebu City, I'm up in the air a bit too, so I get a pretty decent breeze. A lot of days I get a decent breeze through my condo. Manila a little less, maybe because of so many tall buildings. Has something to do with it. Has something to do with the weather patterns, of course. And Davao, relatively less average wind there. Average water temperature, pretty much the same. We've got warm seas around the Philippines, and those warm seas, if a low depression or a tropical storm comes in and hits those warm seas, I've heard weather forecasters over the years saying, well, this storm isn't going to turn into much, no reason to worry, and then it turns into a super typhoon. Numerous times I've seen the popular weather forecasters say that. And what happens is these storms hit those warm waters just like they do in the Gulf of Mexico by the USA. And that warm water they pick up very quickly, pick up extreme amount of energy and force, and they turn into much larger storms. Tourism score, kind of interesting. Tourism score, which favors clear, rainless days with perceived temperatures between 65 and 80 degrees Fahrenheit. And there again, January, February, cooler than March, April, May. May generally is the warmest temp. Then it cools off just a little bit. But every year is different. These averages are exactly that. Averages are averages. You can have, like every 4 years, you can have a drought and more sun, and then you average that in with the other 3 years, and so there's no such thing as normal. I hate the word normal when you're talking about. You can talk averages, but normal, no, nothing is normal. Growing season for crops almost 100% of the time. Growing degree days. Average daily instant shortwave solar energy. And if you're interested, the sun just throws immense amounts of energy at not just the Earth but all the planets, and all the planets are undergoing various changes. And there are a number of sites you can view. I've got an app on my phone that shows me the various the protons, electrons, photons. Let's see, just solar, wind, and cosmic rays. Shows me all that type of thing. It's amazing what these scientists can measure these days. Various types of storms that come from the sun will affect earthquakes, will affect your physical and your mental health. So it's good to be aware of that type of thing. I'll do another video about that. Go to the map here, and here's the Philippines. And if you want to add your city, something close to your city, to this, go over here to Bacolod City. It's becoming more and more popular with expats, and pretty much just the same, just the same. Well, if you live in an area that gets more wind, yeah, pretty close to the same. Interesting here, a little bit warmer for Bacolod during a few months here than Cebu City. Interesting. Average monthly rainfall also, they get a little more rain during a few months here than Dumaguete, Cebu City, and Davao, on average. Go up here to Angeles, see what happens with Angeles or Clark International Airport. Okay, a little bit cooler, generally just a little bit cooler than the rest of them. That's interesting. On average, clear skies, right in the same category. Chance of precipitation, greater than the rest of them, many of the months, but not all. Less precipitation, January, February, March, April, getting close to the same, and October, November, December. Jumping over to weather.com, and this is Guadalupe, Philippines, which is Cebu City. It's just it's a barangay in Cebu City. We're looking at January, and you can look at the various years. You can jump forward. It's easier to do here. I haven't had any luck pressing these buttons here. Anyway, as I was saying, your temperatures very little. Your high temperatures throughout the day, about 4 degrees difference throughout the various days and weeks and months. 80, 82, and then you're below that, and your more gray is your nighttime temperatures. There again, they don't change. They go from mid 70s to mid to high 80s. Even here's 190 in January. We're going to look at typhoon tracks here in a little bit and talk about why that should possibly affect where you decide to settle. Going to show you a Windy app that just has a ton of different information for all around the world, wherever you live or in the Philippines. The type of weather information that you can bring up using that free app, just amazing. But first, the point I'm trying to make, I've read through a lot of research, a lot of sites describing weather in the Philippines. Pagasa, the government agency that puts out weather and climate reports, read through their very long, detailed report. In the end, what matters to you? It matters what's the temperature. Is it going to be are there going to be enough dry days where you can get out and enjoy yourself in the Philippines? And the answer is basically yes. Joke often among many many expats is, oh man, it's so hot in the Philippines. How can you stand to live here? As we're sitting out on a porch or balcony and enjoying a cool beverage and nice comfortable breeze. And the fact of the matter is that temperatures don't change very much, going about over 1,000 kilometers north to south or east to west in the Philippines. They stay pretty much the same. They're in from nighttime mid 70s to 80s, and then in the hotter summer months into the 90s. Pretty much the same all over the Philippines. And you'll get little differences. There's 4 different types of climate areas, and 2 major ones: the hot or warm dry season, which isn't necessarily very dry oftentimes, but it's drier than the hot wet season, warm wet season. And then you have a few areas that the rain is pretty constant all year long, very relatively small areas. But I don't want to get too deep into those types of things. You can use that map that I showed you on that site and go in and look at the individual type of area that you're interested in. Now let's talk about historic typhoon tracks and why it might affect where you would want to live. Millions of people, probably billions of people around the world, live in areas that are subject to typhoons, hurricanes, tornadoes, flooding. You don't need a typhoon. You don't need a tropical storm to have a lot of flooding that can wipe out residences and do a lot of damage, kill people. You don't need those big storms, but those big storms can do major damage. Even in the U.S., Gulf of Mexico, the Florida coast, up the East Coast, regularly get hit by hurricanes, tropical storms, and yet there are millions of people that keep rebuilding and living in those areas for various reasons. Something to consider. On average, the Philippines, in their Philippine area of responsibility, has about 20 storms, named storms that come into their area of responsibility, big rectangular type box around the Philippines. Most of those don't make landfall, but they do affect the weather and climate here in the Philippines. So let's look at that. Jumping over to the tropical cyclone paths here, annual, and we'll look at 2018, 19, 2020, 2021, 2020. And Typhoon Odette, this was a big one. This was a super typhoon, I believe. Yeah, it was super typhoon. Had a major effect across Cebu City, Cebu, and all the islands on the east going off to the west. Did some major damage. A lot of places still not rebuilt over 2 years later. What they have on Pagasa is a government site that tracks climate weather systems here in the Philippines. And 2018, we'll go down here. I came in 2015, so I was, in fact, this one, I think I stayed up until this tropical storm. I think I stayed up till 3 in the morning for a couple of these, actually back in 2017. and really didn't turn out into much at all. And 99% of them come in from the Pacific across here. This dotted line is the Philippines area of responsibility. Philippines area of responsibility. Once it comes in, these tropical storms have an international name out here. Once it comes across that line, it gets the Philippines, renames it, which can be kind of confusing. And if it goes out the other side, it goes back to the international name. This is Taiwan up here. You have Luzon, the Visayas in here, Palawan, Mindanao Island here. These islands up here can get hit quite frequently because a lot of these typhoons, as you'll see, they veer north. They will veer north, and Batanes Islands up here, not unusual for them to get hit. Anyway, this particular one, Agaton, and this is the international name in parentheses, each of these, but we haven't had a number of them during that year that came right across the Visayas, affected the northern Mindanao area, and this one just barely kind of petered out there. And you never know where these things are going to go. They can go one direction, then change their mind. There are so many forces. There are wind currents, high pressure, low pressures from different directions, ocean currents, mountains. Of course, not mountains. Well, they're underground mountains, underwater mountains, but that affects your currents. One up here formed, went across Taiwan. This one also, but it can affect the weather. These systems can, even when they're out here, they can affect what's going on. This is a severe tropical storm, tropical depression, typhoon. There again, didn't make landfall. A lot of these do not make landfall. On average, about 20 storms, named storms, come into the Philippine area of responsibility each year. I think 2018 there was 21. 2019, 21. I think 22 in 1920. 1921, I think 15, and 18 in 1922, I believe. And not all of them make landfall, as you can see, but like this one too. It affected primarily northern Luzon, but even it can affect, depends upon the force, it can affect the weather throughout because it can kind of swirl around. And quickly, just a lot of these just didn't really hit. This one made landfall. This one made landfall across northern Luzon, central Luzon Island. Another one that went through the middle, the Visayas primarily. And what you'll find is these outer islands, and they're going this direction. These outer islands, oftentimes, just like in Florida or the Gulf Coast, once these typhoons, hurricanes hit landfall, they generally lose a lot of their power, but not always. They can sometimes gain additional power in these warm seas here and keep their strength. So here yours legend, super typhoon, typhoon, severe tropical storm, and tropical depression. Tropical storm, there again it bounced around, changed its mind a couple of times. This one just barely came into the area of responsibility. Go down here, northern Luzon here, severe tropical storm. There again, these did not make landfall. Here we had super typhoon, Carding, came across, really affected the Manila metropolitan area and areas north. There again, hit Luzon here and then petered out. You got a long mountain range up here. That mountain range often depletes the energy out of a lot of these typhoons that hit up in that area, sparing the western side of the island One, for those of you who care, still here. Well, this one here, there's many models that comes into the Philippine Area of Responsibility, and instead of going across, it decided to change its direction, actually went back out of the area. This one changed its course a few times here, and ended up there again, hitting the Luzon area up here. Definitely it would affect Leyte and Samar Islands over here. Unusual one, Tropical Storm Chrising, actually went across the southern island of Mindanao. Relatively unusual for them to go across Mindanao, but they do. Another one, and you can see almost all of them veer north northwest. There again, this one came Tropical Depression Lani, came right across the Visayas. Well, this year, partly because of the El Nino weather effect, I think we're predicted to have substantially less tropical storms and typhoons than average. Maybe I saw an article saying maybe 11. One of the best apps, absolutely best apps out there, and it's free to use. Now I pay for the premium. I just paid I think less than like 18 something for a year. Anybody who puts out a great app, in my opinion, deserves to get paid for their efforts, and I get some perks. I get longer day forecasts, a number of different things, and yeah, they have apps for Apple or Android phones. They've got, or on your tablet, windy.com, and you've got over here on the right, you got radar, you got satellite, wind, rain, temperature, clouds, waves, rain accumulation, thunderstorms. Oh, PM 2.5. I should know what that is, but I don't. Altitude flying information. You've got a little time down here that you can grab this and you can move it along and see what happens over time. And it has me keyed into, it looks like it's got me over in Europe right now because I'm on a VPN, a virtual private network, and it must think that I'm over in Europe, I guess. Where's the Philippines? Okay, here we have Southeast Asia. We have the Philippines right in here, and so there we are. You see the wind still coming. And we've got a couple of wind patterns throughout the year. Basically, you have your northeast monsoons, where a lot of the wind comes from up here, generally a little bit cooler, less moisture in it. And then we're shortly here in the coming month or so, we're going to go to the southwest monsoons, and these warmer seas down here, we're going to start getting, the wind will be coming this way. And so the wind and the clouds and the rain and the moistures, and we will get warmer. We'll get more rain, southwest monsoons versus the northeast monsoons. But here, Cebu City, you can click on any of those and get some specific information. Wind. And let's go to satellite. We can go to radar. We can go to satellite and just see what we have here. And you can see that we're getting some clouds. Like today, early in the morning, we had some. They even show lightning going off here. I'll zoom in here just a little bit. Lightning up here. So we have Cebu City here, Bohol Island, Mindanao Island, Leyte and Samar up here, and the island of Luzon, large Luzon Island, Manila up in this area. 3D mode. There you get a look at the Earth itself, and there again you can scroll in, and yeah, you can scroll around any place in the world to see what's going on. The USA. So that's a quick introduction to Philippine weather and some of the apps and sites that are very useful. I didn't talk about man manipulating the weather. Gosh, all over the world, they've been doing it since the 60s or 70s or even before that. Then I think even in the Middle East, who was UAE or one of those Middle Eastern countries, uh, dumped electrical charges into the clouds, and they had an overreaction. They end up creating huge floods, huge damaging floods in one or more cities over there in the Middle East. The Philippines, even this year, has done some cloud seeding, trying to get it to rain a little bit. And yeah, I know in the U.S., gosh, yeah, in the 60s and 70s, they were doing that type of thing. So more and more, they're experimenting with various types of systems, electrical charges, where you can affect the intensity of storms, and that is another very deep subject, and there are a few people covering that much, much, much better than I ever could. They've got the knowledge and background and have done their research. But take those things into account. If you change the weather in one area, surely it affects the weather downstream from that area. If you pull the moisture out of the clouds here, it's not going to be there as those clouds move further into another area, another country, another region of a country. And it is still at this point, it's not a science. It is experimenting. Now we've had a lot of experimenting with weather over the many, many decades. And gosh, if I remember right, just in the last few years, the governments around the world have been experimenting in various types of ways. And some of you understand what I'm talking about. Anyway, that's a discussion for another time, another channel perhaps. Anyway, thanks for watching. Take care, stay safe, know your risks, and we'll see you next time.